Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Veiled Yellow Tea session. We haven't talked about yellow teas in a long time, and there are reasons. One of the obvious reasons is as a production modality in China. This is one of the least produced type of teas. Hard to come by. Not much yellow tea is really exported, particularly to the West. Most of the yellow tea actually is, let me make some general statements here about yellow tea, and then we'll get in specifically to ours. So actually, yeah, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to talk not so much history. It'll just be a brief, fleeting history. And then we'll talk about processing methodology, because I want to leave you all in a position where you have an understanding of what the processing methodology looks like. Over the next couple weeks, we'll talk about more of the alleged health benefits because yellow tea has some different types of health benefits. We'll talk about range of possibilities with yellow tea because, again, with most of you not having much exposure to yellow tea here, it's hard to necessarily have a great understanding of what the range might be. So those are the things that I'll cover in the next week or two. So let's go ahead and talk about as a percentage of the total crop in China. Yellow tea is the least produced. It's like under 1%. And yet it's growing. It's growing at a rate of about 200 or 300% per year, which would suggest to everybody who's listening that, oh, wow, they've discovered it in China and the market's really going gangbusters. And the answer is that's not quite right. They have discovered it in northern China. So in Shandong, in Shanxi, both of those provinces are relatively large consumers of yellow tea. And actually, what the government in Jinzhai and Luan is trying to do, that's the county, are trying to do, they're trying to set up shops in every major city along the Yellow River. And this is a way to start to expand the reach. And the Yellow River is in North China versus the Yangtze, which runs through central China. And actually, I'll get you some maps next week. And for those of you who just got up and took a quick glance and didn't see the word map, so you didn't open anything, actually, I did send you something this morning. I sent you a chart. We're going to talk about that chart today as well. And that chart, actually, let's start out with that chart. Let me give you all a minute to find the chart. But that chart is a fun chart because it really talks about a range of taste possibilities. And so it goes from, you'll notice that there's a Y and then there's an hour figure. And the first one, I think, is 0 hours and then goes all the way up, I believe, to 13 or 14 hours. And it's the same varietal, it's taken from the same fields, but the samples are tasted at different times. And so you see when it starts out, it's like green tea. It's more umami than anything else. But then as you go through the yellowing process over time, it shifts, and it's that blue part of the chart which shifts upwards, and you get more sweetness. And so there's chemical reactions going on here. And the chemical reactions, they're thermochemical reactions. And we'll talk about that in a second. So before we talk specifically about those reactions, let's talk about what happens in terms of processing. So the tea leaves are picked. This is the same everywhere. And the usual pick, and this has to do with where most of yellow tea goes to. The market it services is usually a middle market. It's not necessarily a high-end market. So now we have to get even more specific because some yellow teas are completely high-end. So things like Junshan needle. Junshan needle is a Chinese national icon. And when China joined the United Nations, 1971, this was the tea they served to all the delegates who were at the United Nations. When you go to Junshan, Junshan is an island, and you go there, you have the cultural leader, the intangible asset, the cultural leader of Junshan Neil, who's 87, 88 years old, and he's a nationally recognized figure. As is usual with these figures, they have posses, 8 or 9 people who, accompany them almost everywhere they go. And so that tea is not really included when I talk about middle market tea, because that is very obviously not middle market tea. That is at the very high end of yellow teas. So really what I'm talking about when I talk about middle market, I'm talking about those yellow teas that come from Anhui. So that would be the Jinzhai Dabian Mountain yellow teas. And so where are most of those going? Most of those are ending up with lesser picks, more processed, and they end up in boba teas, they end up in tea bags. Not good stuff, not good stuff. Now, that's not what we have here. You have the high end, and you'll see that over these next 3 weeks. You have the high end of the yellow tea, also coming from Jinzhai. And so you're probably wondering why I'm talking about this market segmentation. I'm talking about it because we're also going to learn during this session how the government is feeling about this tea and what they're hoping to achieve with this tea. Because with this growth rate, this is going to enrich the farmers. And they want those farmers enriched. They want those crops to be more and more successful. So as soon as you get that type of concentration with government and scientists looking at and trying to figure out what's going on and trying to also figure out how to make more money for the people who are farming this, they start to think about, well, what standards should there be? So they have some obvious standards in terms of hygiene, the machinery, they have process standards. This is a good thing for most consumers. For us and for you, you really want not much change from the craft farmers who are doing traditional processing, who've been doing it the longest, who have an idea of how to make some of the best tea product. Most of the farmers don't belong to that level. And so the result is that's why you're getting this double discussion today, because you're getting a market introduction, you're getting a discussion of science and government thinking about what the future should be, but you're actually tasting, oh, we're tasting top of mind stuff. Okay, so now I've given you a complete way to think about where we're starting today. So, furthermore, as the government thinks about the future, one of the things is they'd like to expand the haul. In other words, the yield of the crop. So, how do you do that? Well, the farmers themselves have already semi shown a direction because they pick not only in the spring, by the way, we only get spring pick, and you understand why, because that's unsprayed. But they also pick in the summer and they pick in the autumn in this particular area. And that's not all the farmers. The farmers who are picking in the spring basically stop at the spring. The farmers that pick in the following two seasons, the summer and the fall, are increasing yield that way, but they're not generally picking in the spring because the tea plant can't keep withstanding pick after pick, season after season. It needs rest, recovery. So part of the other initiative that China is trying to push right now is the possibility of mechanical harvest. So let's step back a minute and talk about why that will never show up here in this shop. The reason that will never show up in this shop is until AI becomes something more than a large language model, you can't have a really reliable craft machine picking. Just can't do it. And they've experimented, they've done all sorts of experiments. And in fact, over the years, Bijou and I, as we've traveled to China, one of the things we've heard in the background, particularly in Anhui, particularly in Hunan, we've heard, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could consolidate fields, buy out small farmers, bring a plantation like an Indian style plantation where for miles and miles of land, you've got tea and it's uniform. You get a machine in there, you pick, saves the farmer energy, personal energy, increases the yield. So you've heard this, or we've heard this bandied about, but what are the obstacles in China? Well, there are a number. The first is there's no easy way to say to the small farmers who say maybe they own 20 acres in 10 plots, or even 20 plots, or even 40 plots, small plots that are not contiguous. How do you deal with that? Well, that's a problem. If the farmer wants to give up tea farming, it's not a problem. But so long as they want to do tea farming, they have the right to continue to use that land. So you can't have a patchwork and expect machinery to mechanical harvesting to be very efficient. You just can't. Mechanical harvesting, is it good enough to get individual leaves? Not yet, not yet, not doing the job. So from our perspective, we're only going to deal with the farmers who are not doing them because, again, this is a craft shop. If we were selling market tea, and who knows, at some point we may sell market tea, though never in this shop. That's a different story. So the pick then, let's go back now to the process for craft. It's a bud and 3 or 4 leaves. So it's a larger pick than, say, most of the white teas, most of the teas overall. You get down to that 4th leaf. It's almost like picks from Yunnan. You bring it in and you do a spread. And it's funny because they use a term in Chinese which means they spread out the leaves and let them wither. And then they use the term withering for putting it on a conveyor belt and passing it under heat. And this is mechanically generated heat, right? And the mechanically generated heat goes anywhere from about 130 degrees to about 170 degrees. So they're trying to get it dry or withered. And what's the value again of withering it? You take out a certain percentage of water. You want to get the moisture content in the leaves down to about 60 or 70%. And you notice, because for those of you who follow the numbers and listen to the numbers that I give for each of the styles, each of the styles is a little different. This style tolerates more water in the initial decline or withering. Because many of them, you know, you look at the Wulong teas, they're aiming closer for 50% of moisture retained. Here, and you'll see why in a minute. So you go through that process, you get it down to that 60, 70%, and then you're ready. Oh, you're not ready yet. You're going to roll after that. So you go and you roll, and they, for the most part, are not doing hand rolling. They're doing a machine rolling. Although a few of the most traditional farmers who don't have huge amounts of crops are still doing hand rolling. Most of them are doing a machine rolling. And it's like a screw device, and it rotates and it rolls, and you can tighten it so it'll be a tighter roll. You can loosen it so it'll be a looser roll. And when it comes out, just like in any format or any category of tea where they do rolling, the leaves come out hot. And so you've got to hot and sticking together. So you've got to get them all loosened up and separated and ready and so forth. And they do that. And then the next step, and this next step has had so many challenges in English. I mean, there's no challenge in China where they're doing this step. They know what they're doing, and they use the same term all the time, mud palm. And so, yeah, in English, you've got several translations. They smother the tea. You even heard me say that. Ooh, God, that doesn't sound good. They stew the tea. That sounds a little better, you know, beef bourguignon and tea, you know, that works a little bit better. So you're going to see lots of different ways of talking about this, but really they're using moisture and a thermal chemical reaction to produce a result. Wow, I got to use more than 8 letters. I'm really happy now. Yes.
What's the Chinese name again for the first step? Or for the word for step is Jeremy's question?
I have no idea what that.
Not sure what that means.
Yeah, I have no idea what that means. So again, they spread it out, they wither, and then they go to rolling, and then they go to this munhuang. And the munhuang is this process where they either wrap it in paper or bamboo or some porous type of material, and they put it in a very humid, very tightly temperature controlled environment. And you're going to ask me magic numbers. Give me the magic number. What's the temperature controlled environment? It differs from farmer to farmer to farmer. However, what I will say is most of them are aiming somewhere between about 85 to about 100 degrees.
And perhaps by step, Jeremy, this term you use, munha.
Munha.
What's the romanization? How would you spell it?
Oh, MENG, HUANG. So at any rate, when you are, and
you were just talking about temperature.
Yeah, no, I'm still in the same place. I want to go back to this munhong for a minute because I want to help you shorten whatever research you think you're going to get out of looking up that word, because I'm explaining what the process is, and this will tell you why it's so complex to get an exact translation. There is no exact translation, but these are some of the things you see across the literature. So they're using some temperature between 85 and 100, something like that. They measure, they pile it. So how large is the pile? How high is the pile? It's between 11 inches and 20 inches, generally speaking. Ah, okay. I realize I might have to explain something here because somebody's going to make an assumption after they hear all of this great detail. Oh, this is what they do at every farm. You notice I'm giving you ranges. And the reason I'm giving you ranges is because this is what we have observed. This is what we know. But we also know, for example, when they do Junshan needle, it's a different type of measurement, and they do it for a different amount of time. And they don't measure the internal temperature of the tea leaves. Here in Jinzhai, they measure the internal temperature. Once that temperature gets to be about 100 degrees, boink, they're done. They're done with that round. And so they take everything apart and mix everything together. So one of the things that becomes apparent when you listen to me, oh my goodness, we're already into this process. I'm just making some estimates, and understate, who knows what he's saying, but it looks like this first set of steps takes 12 to 14 hours. Now let's see. I know when I get to do these projects in my garage, takes space. So you have all these going on day after day as the harvest comes in. You need lots of space. This is very important because I'm getting to the LCS part of the broadcast, because many times tea that's advertised as yellow tea hasn't gone through this process, because it's so much easier to say, well, I do this thing, and yet, in fact, just do green tea. All right, so you go through that 4 to 7 hour process of stewing or smothering or whatever. The yellowing, that's what I'm going to call it, the yellowing process. Now, I think that's really the best term to use, because then everybody in the industry understand, oh, the yellowing, I understand that. Even though the Chinese term doesn't exactly mean that, yes, I understand that. And at the conclusion of that, you mix everything up again together. What do? You have this wet, goppy mess of tea leaves. Oh, God, what am I going to do with this? Well, I'd be frightened that I did something wrong if I were confronted with this. But no, they haven't done anything wrong. What they next do is dry it. They put it on a conveyor belt, and the temperature in there's two ways to do it. And actually, I sent you a picture of one of the ways that sometimes they do it, which is actually to put it in a bowl. You see that there's kind of like railroad tracks. You push that back and forth, and there's coal underneath that's creating temperature. That's small farming. And we need to talk about that specifically, because that actually comes from the Premier's Choice process. Remember, these guys are all neighbors. Luan and Jinzhai, adjacent. And so they looked across, oh, you're doing this. Maybe I can do this too. At any rate, they dry the tea leaves, because can you work very well with a bunch of wet, damp, dense tea leaves? And the answer is absolutely not. So they dry it and are aiming to get the moisture level down to 30 to 40%. Okay, so that takes whatever amount of time it takes. And usually that's going to be accomplished in under an hour. Okay, from there, you have slight rest, not for the people, for the tea leaves. And then you go through yellowing again. Ah, all right. Are you doing it at the same temperature? No, it's usually not at the same temperature. Are you doing it for the same duration? Absolutely, unequivocally, not at the same duration. So the first time it's anywhere from 4.5 to 7 hours of the yellowing process. This second time around, it's usually 2 to 2.5 hours. So what are we doing as a farmer the second time around? Why the heck didn't you just do it for 7 or 9 hours the first time and then eliminate the second time? You can't get the deepening of the yellowing process all in one setting. They find they get them deepening. Okay, so what does deepening look like? Look at your chart and look at where you are at 10 hours. At 10 hours, you're sweeter. You moved away from the umami and you moved up that site to sweetness. Wow, that's good. I like sweet. Sweet without any sugar. That's what I like. Okay, so 2 to 2.5 hours yellowing. Again, you take out this mess of leaves. They've been piled. They're wet. And you dry again. And this time you dry to get down as close to 5% as you can get. And then what do? Well, if you're in a hurry, you kind of say, God, maybe I can get away with just packaging this and putting it on the market. But if you're a traditionalist, and remember, here at Sophie's, we're all traditionalists. You pile the dry leaves, but you have them on separate racks, and you allow them to oxidize over a 1 to 2 day period. So let's think about this a minute. At what speed are they oxidizing? So you have to ask yourself a couple questions. Well, what's the temperature? Are they artificially raising the temperature, or is this open air oxidation? So open air oxidation. So it's going to oxidize at the speed of white tea, approximately. And the answer is yes. Secondly, you have to ask, wait a minute, how much water is in this? We're down to 4 or 5% now. Okay. That means that the oxidation is going to be a little bit less quick than when you had it fully wet. The overall oxidation is higher than the oxidation that's achieved in white tea. Because white tea is what? 2%, 3%, something like this. This is more like 5 to 6%. So realistically, what you've done is you've used, as a farmer, you've used this process. You've gotten it down to the moisture level it needs to be down to in order to package it and sell it. You bake it one more time to make sure that it's under 5% because you don't want mold. You package and you're done. So this is on average, it's going to take 3 to 5 days. And so you have to have a lot of space because every day you've got more leaves coming in. So yeah, everything's got to be moving along. And then at the end, everything's got to be moving along. So that's the basic process of yellow tea. Now, there's all sorts of variations on that and all sorts of additional steps. And this is why you see such different flavor profiles, and you're gonna taste those flavor profiles. You go from anything like what you get today. Oh, I'm not gonna tell you what you're gonna tell me. All the way up to the last one we do, which will be in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, golden disc, where you get slight hints of sweetness. In fact, pronounced hints of sweetness. Okay, everybody's standing around as if I've overtalked. Let's see if that's true. Oh, I have overtalked. And I am gonna take a 10-second break here. And I ask the tea master to come and join me and demonstrate what? Oh, she just said how nice I look today. That was a very nice compliment, tea master. And here is the numinous tea master, Bijou, full of nice compliments.
Yeah, come here.
Yes, John, come
Thank you.
here. Yes.
So we in the new tea friend talk to them about the
Ah,
focus.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got new tea friends today. So realistically, all you really need are 2 cups and a strainer. We use more cups so that we can cool the water down. You notice that in the instructions I sent out, this is 170 degrees. You don't have to measure anything because everything is pre-measured. We will demonstrate first, and after we demonstrate, then we'll brew along with you. So that's why we're set up like this, to kind of get the demonstration part done more quickly. The timing on this is 2 minutes. The grammage in each of yours is about 4 grams. We draw water and it's preheated in these water towers we have to 100, some of it's 175 and some of it's 200. And you can use any temperature of water between 212 and 170 to first rinse the cups and make sure that everything is completely clean, no soap stains, no anomalous smells, nothing to interfere with your pleasure and enjoyment of this great tea. So the tea master is drawing water from one of the water towers. It's 175 degree, and she's going to cool it down. You're going to see her aerate and dissipate the steam. And actually, you know, when I do it, it's just plain with water. But you notice she has a rhythm. And truly, in terms of what you're trying to achieve in this set of maneuvers, is to get into a rhythm. Why? Because getting into that rhythm helps you become present. And when you are present, then you have a greater chance to understand and enjoy the tea fully. Details matter, but don't stress out about it. All right, so tea master is getting the tea leaves. She has them in the small bamboo tray. And then she has a bamboo, it's almost like a needle, so that she doesn't have to touch the leaves directly with her hands. And you notice for her, everything has to have an order. So she pours the water back into the kettle, and I'll explain that maneuver in a minute. The tea leaves go into the heated cup. She shakes the cup. She smells the aroma. Did I use the right tea? Yes. She takes the kettle, which has a spout where she can control the pour, and pours on the sides of the cup, trying not to pour directly on the tea itself. Wow, I already smell that thing over here. That's incredible. Okay. So you see most of the leaves are on the bottom. And Whoops. There you go. The timer was set for 2 minutes, which is running down now. And so what we need to understand, there's a couple things. In general, large leafed yellow tea from Anhui tends to have a certain flavor versus the tiny leaf yellow tea varietals, which tends to have a sweeter flavor. So we talked about all those steps that we went through. What chemically occurs to the tea leaf? Well, there's a decrease in all the catechins except GCG, gallo, blah, blah, blah. Forgot the rest of it. But it's one of the catechins. That increases by tenfold. EGCG, the one that everybody talks about, the one that for tumors in a test tube, it destroys tumors in the test tube. That one decreases markedly. So you have this gallic acid, which, here it is. Nope, I don't have that whole, next week, I'll have that correctly. I'll be able to recall that correctly for you. The one that increases by 10 times. But that obviously is part of the flavor profile. What else increases? So the overall catechin content decreases, theaflavins, thearubicins increases. Oh, am I hearing an old story? Am I really hearing about old friends from red tea? Theaflavins and thearubicins. By the way, timer went off. Tea master separated the tea leaves from the tea water. In addition to our old friends, theaflavins and thearubicins, we have theasinensins and theabrominins. Do any of these things make a difference? The answer is yes, because just like with curcumin, oh no, he's gone out of his head. That's not a tea. That's some sort of root. Yes, it comes from turmeric. I'm not out of my head. That was identified as very good for certain aspects of human health, and it was able to be patentable. The theaflavins, thearubicins, theasinenses, theabrominins are able to be patentable. And that's one of the reasons this is important, because you're starting to see these compounds show up mixed with Western medicines, particularly cancer medicines, because they appear to blunt, well, let's see, they appear to have a protective effect on healthy cells. And that's particularly the thearubicins. All right, so we separated the water, beautiful, beautiful yellow color. Wow, big aroma, and we're going to enter the quality arena. And again, for the newcomers, quality arena is the first thing we do after we brew the tea. And it's all part of this rhythm. And what we're looking for initially is, where is the astringency in the mouth? It'll be at different places for all of you. That's normal. We're all genomically different. We then evaluate what's the aftertaste. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it isn't. Don't worry about that. And then one of the most important things is we consider the energetics. Now, in some places, they talk about cha qi, tea, qi, the qi of tea, and so forth. The energetics are something very definitive that you can feel, either a warming, a grounding. That's what we're talking about. And that is the equivalent of cha qi. So I'm going to enter. You're going to watch me enter. 170-degree sip. I can take a little bit more than usual. Okay. I'm getting a feel for the astringency, and newcomers, you should have a notebook so that you can copy down, because the purpose of doing 3 consecutive weeks is to have you be able to compare. What's my feeling this week versus next week or the week thereafter or last year when I had yellow tea? What was it like? This is important. This is, again, part of the rhythm and part of being present as you do the tea. I'm going to take a second. The regulars all know that I have no self-control, so I'm going to take a second sip. And as I take the second sip, what's going to happen is I'm going to focus on the aroma. I'm going to verify where on my tongue there's astringency, what aftertaste I'm tasting, if any. I'm going to confirm if I am able to feel energetics. I'm going to confirm what those are. If I haven't felt them yet, I'm not going to worry about it. They will come. And lastly, I'm going to get first impressions on taste. Oh my goodness. Okay, I have all those things. It's your turn to brew. Tea Master is going to go ahead and brew with you. So your water, 170-degree water. If you aren't able to exactly control, if you air lesser heat than greater heat. Lesser heat will not flatten the flavor. Greater heat will flatten the flavor. Yes, Tea Master, not in a hurry. Just everything steady, rhythmic, and neat. Her tableau on this tea tray is always neat. And there's a reason, because that's her rhythm. And she's able to keep track of things. 2 minutes is the time you're going to set for this, by the way.
Jennifer observes the aroma of the wet leaves is almost like tobacco.
So Jennifer says the aroma of the wet leaves resembles almost like tobacco. And I like this comment. And as you go and end up tasting this, there's going to be some confirmation of this. And I like that we're starting at this spot.
Let me also correct myself, but then think in reading, I think the visual of the wet leaves also is reminiscent of tobacco. If I read your comment correctly, the aroma and the wet leaves almost smell like tobacco. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Kathy observed the warm leaves smell very malty.
Good. We're on malty now. Warm, tobacco, malty. Yep.
Jennifer shares, and behind the tobacco is a sweet smell of fruit, maybe cherry.
Okay, now we're getting some sweetness in here. And by the way, none of you should feel unhappy or bad. Well, hell, I don't smell cherry, I smell lychee. Or I think of this as honey. Don't worry, because again, the language of flavor and aroma is really, really hard. We're all smelling approximately the same thing, but we're attributing different words to that same smell. And so that's why it's just good to get those things out. And again, newcomers, you can only make a mistake if you say something smells like garlic. Now, if you do that, that's a big problem. Outside of that, almost everything else is going to be acceptable.
Jennifer adds, pardon me, the screen shifted. Jennifer adds, of course, there's the umami grassy smell as well.
Great. So thinking about that chart, it really is hard to completely eliminate umami. There's always going to be a hint of umami. And look at that chart again, because there's one other thing I want to point out. This comes from a group of Chinese scientists, and you notice they couldn't even write the word of what they meant on the top right, because they said the smell and taste of over oxidized. Now, it's true. That word is a swear word in the tea world. If you use that word, be prepared, arm yourself properly before you let that word slip out of your mouth. And you notice tea scientists couldn't even write it. And that word is sour. Things that are over oxidized are sour, but don't use that word unless you are truly certain that it's sour, because that is an ugly word in the tea industry. Yes.
Rob shares the warm leaves to him smell like toasted malt.
I am all on board. Rob talks about toasted malt. The warm leaves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
the warm leaves. That's a great. So we've got hints of tobacco. We've got toasted malt. Kathy is full on malt. Yeah, we're beginning to hear a theme here. Timer has gone off. I'm gonna separate the tea leaves from the tea water, and you know, not in a hurry, just steady. Get every last drop. Save the leaves. You get a great next cup. And now it's your turn. Oh, excuse me. Now it's your turn to enter the quality arena. So while you're thinking of things, let me continue on how the constituents that change under the yellowing process. I said the polyphenols to amino acids ratio changes. The amino acids increase, and the amino acids govern two things. They govern umami and sweetness. Yes.
Becca asks, is the size of the cup brewing important, or an amount of water for this tea? For this amount of tea. So how much water size of cup?
Yes, it's got to be 12 to 16 ounces. And here's how I'd really phrase my answer, because if you're using an 8-ounce cup to brew the tea in, then that's going to intensify a lot what you end up with. And it's not going to taste exactly like this. It's our instructions, our measurements are from 12 to 16 ounces.
Just be based on, so the amount of tea you have in your bag is prepackaged to come out with an excellent flavor if you follow the instructions using a 12 to 16 ounce.
Okay. I still didn't answer it correctly, and the producer got that all squared away. That's correct.
Mary observes the brewed tea has a sweet smell, like a hint of honey. The taste is both a little sweet and a little umami.
A little sweet and a little umami. I am good with that. Remember, we heard from Jennifer hints of cherry. Well, Harry says, no. A little bit of honey, a little bit of sweetness, hints of sweet umami. We had Rob with umami. We've had several of you with umami. So and malt. We're getting this whole range of flavors here. This is wonderful. Yes.
Rob adds the wet leaves have a combination of floral vegetal scent. And are those stems I'm seeing amongst the leaves?
Okay, so Rob asked, Well, first off, he refers to hints of floral and hints of
Floral and vegetable.
vegetal,
Scent.
which is great because that also points back to the tobacco, and the floral points to the cherries and the honey. And then he asks, are there stems in this? And the answer is yes. And there's a technical reason that the answer is yes, because all of you are getting the very last of what we have availed. And so the result is the bottom part of this last bag, it's a little bit broken up. So yes, that's what you're observing. If you had gotten the very start of the bag, no, you wouldn't have seen them broken up like that.
Kathy shares she gets smooth mouthfeel with light astringency on the top of my tongue.
Light astringency on the top of the tongue for Kathy, and that matches mine, by the way. I get a very light astringency on top of the tongue. What was the first part of
Smooth mouth.
Oh, smooth mouthfeel. Absolutely. Smooth, mellow mouthfeel. This is a tea that you're going to find to some degree that if you're not present, you'll drink it. You'll know you enjoyed. You'll be left with an enjoyable feeling, but you won't have analyzed all these flavors. Yes.
Peter shares, I changed the filters on our water and they are still evening out. So I have no reliable comments to add for taste. As for energetics, though, I feel an even calming, grounding experience as a contained contact with all of my insides at once, rather than say starting at the core and emanating out.
Love this comment. So Peter makes an energetics comment, and the reason I love it, this actually matches fairly much what I'm feeling. So he talks about a grounding. Yeah, I'm getting that. But the key part of what he talks about is that it's spread out through the body. If he hadn't said that, I'd have been too embarrassed to say my shoulders feel warmed up from this. I really do get the feeling in my shoulders. I do get that grounding feeling. It's there.
Jeremy observes the wet leaves are unusually smushed, and from those languid leaves, I imbibe a golden diamond colored celestial broth. Some astringency on the side of the tongue, warming in my head and mouth, slowly spreading, thirst quenching.
Love this description from Jeremy. Thirst quenching. This is a very important element. And it matches back to why I said that if we weren't going through the quality arena and we were just sitting talking, you would have finished this tea and you said, God, that was good. But you wouldn't have been able to say all these other things. So Jeremy said thirst quenching. What else did she say?
She commented on the beautiful golden diamond colored celestial broth, some astringency on the side of the tongue and warming for her just in the head.
Okay, so warming for Jeremy in the head only, and astringency all over.
On the side of the tongue.
I'm sorry, on the side of the tongue. So again, and that's great because it's different for every single person. And I love the fact that we have one that is in a different place. The other thing that Jeremy noted, which is also really relevant with this particular tea, is the color. The color is golden. She called it a celestial diamond. It really is a distinctive yellowish color. Great catch on all those comments, Jeremy. Yes.
Jonathan asks, how would the people in the yellow tea area talk about the flavor, the taste, and the energetics? What language do they use to talk about yellow tea?
Oh, this is a great question. So Jonathan said, well, here we are. We're discussing an American viewpoint about taste and appearance and the leaves and so forth. How would they discuss it in China? And and he took it up a step because he said, particularly in view of yellow tea overall. So again, Chinese would start out with something different than any of you started out with, which is clean. There are no odd or miscellaneous flavors. Everything is clean and crisp and nothing seems out of place. That's the first thing they'd start out with. They would talk about a hint of roast, and their language around this, they would use something like, well, it's like the good roast you get when you toast rice on purpose at the bottom of a pan. And it's just that beautiful flavor which suffuses your nostrils. And once you drink it, it's like, oh, this is home. They treat that the same way here in the West we treat when, for example, Rob walks in with an unsupervised loaf of sourdough that just came out of the oven, not covered, and he walks in the shop and everybody, oh, this is home. So that's how they look at that toasted rice feel. And that would be the equivalency there. The other thing that the Chinese commentators would say, they would talk about the density of this particular yellow tea and how it is a surprisingly full mouth flavor. And so clean, density, full mouth, and they would follow up with easy to drink.
Rob shares, I get a lot of flavor and sensation across my tongue when I aspirate the tea with a lot of air mixed in.
A good, great comment. So Rob actually intensifies the flavor as he aspirates the air, not aspirates the air, aspirates the tea with the inhaled air across his tongue. And you notice I do that when I enter the quality arena as well. Yeah.
Jenny shares, I love this tea. The scent is warm. I get the malt similar to Rob. Lots of scent of toasted grains. I especially get puffed quinoa. The tea water is clean. Low astringency. I get flavors of corn silk on top with toasted grains underneath, especially corn and quinoa. It cannot, and I just can't get that out of my head, especially pancakes, literally had exactly the time. Okay. But this is what her overall sense is.
Love it. This is Jen has a great comment. And what she did was strengthen this sense of grain. You know, I talked about toasted rice just a minute ago. All of you have talked, many of you have talked about malt. And she said, hey, let's make it real. It's about all the grains, the corn, the sense of corn. So that suggests a slight hint of sweetness as well. The corn feel with the sweetness. She talked about pancakes. You know, normally, if I were in China, nobody would talk about pancakes. But here, this makes really, really good sense because it's this scent of grain that has been cooked on the stove. And you get that, again, it's this hint of I'm back home, or a hint I'm in my childhood, because this is something that, you know, whenever I smell this, this feels good. Love that comment from that perspective, because this tea, when you smell it, and the Chinese always say, yeah, this is really good. And this is why this tea is growing at such a fast rate, because at this level, when people in the tea industry drink this stuff, it's like, wow, they did a great job with this. Yes.
And Jenny E did specify quinoa pancakes, which I left out. My apologies, Jenny. Peter shares asks, do yellow teas in general have an amount of L-theanine?
Yes. So Peter asked, he said, you're always talking about the benefits of L-theanine, but you failed to mention whether this has L-theanine in it. And so, good catch. This does have L-theanine in it. We'll talk a little bit more about L-theanine next week because it doesn't have as much as the white tea. So white tea is still pretty much king. Nonetheless, why did I bring up curcumin earlier? Because when you isolate a compound and attribute magical properties to it, and you've done it for an economic reason, then maybe it's possible that some other things were left out that should still be in there. And this is the same thing with tea. One of the amazing things about theorubicins, and this is just an example because I will get to L-theanine again next week. Theorubicins, they're now beginning to understand, particularly in yellow tea, it looks like it binds with the caffeine molecule, and then when you ingest it, you don't get the effect of caffeine. It isn't picked up. And so the result is you measure caffeine in the tea leaves. Okay, it's X percent. Okay. And then you issue a report. Yeah, this has, 40 grams of caffeine or whatnot. But how many grams of absorbable caffeine does it have? So why is it that I have, well, hands down, all of you I know feel that you're lucky in your jobs and that you have, really great jobs. The answer is no. I have the best job in the world because everything is changing so fast, and all this information about, in quotes, this master plan is amazing as they dig down and figure out. First, they're taking it apart, and now they're trying to understand the totality of it. And this reflects historically, because remember, tea, as far as we understand, was an herbal medicine to start out with. Then it became a catalyst, and then it became a beverage. And now we're going back and saying, hey, maybe we should look the whole picture again. Yes.
Rob says this tea washes away the frustrating feelings of dealing with insane administrivia the other day.
I love this because this falls under the feelings or the how it affects you in a physical way. And he talked about, because he was in here this week and was talking about how difficult in general healthcare has become. Not the administration of, well, no, wait a minute, let's say this correctly. How difficult it is to get adequate or find proper health insurance, and just how frustrating it is to go through this process. And he said, this washes all those frustrations away. The energetics bailed. All right. I think you haven't overtalked. I've overtalked. And I've overtalked because yellow tea is so interesting to me. And there's so many things I want to share, but we have 3 full sessions. Well, we have 2 more left, and there'll be more surprises that come along. And next week's yellow tea standalone is so different from this week's. And the week following, Golden Disc, is even more different than these 2. So we have lots of things to talk about. This is a very fun set of teas to go through. I'm so glad that I'm going through them with you. I salute you for your great observations, particularly getting this coming home observation that you all got in there, the maltiness, just the comfort and the mellowness of this tea. So great job, as always. Your job this week, stay healthy. I'll see you next week with Standalone. Bye bye now. Take care.